Thank you so much for being here tonight. We always try to make our meetings uplifting because we all need that at this time. And we have a really good program for you tonight. And at the end, we will also take announcements from anybody that has announcements about other things that they would like to share with people. So I'm Julie Angieski, and this is Ellen Floyd. We're co-chairs of Indivisible Tacoma. And we're going to ask Vicki to do the land acknowledgement. Barb is down lobbying tonight. So.
Okay, welcome everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. We acknowledge that we are on the stolen lands of the Puyallup Nation who have lived here since time immemorial. We acknowledge that the Puyallup and other Native nations have been the targets of invasion, occupation, and displacement, leading to centuries of trauma. We acknowledge the sovereign rights of the Puyallup and other tribal nations, and we stand in solidarity with their efforts to have these rights honored. We acknowledge that in this moment of increased display of anti-Native sentiment and racism directed toward Black, brown, and immigrant communities, it is imperative that we find common ground to strengthen coalition necessary for the protection of culture, treaty rights, and ultimately for the protection of our lives. Thank you.
So one of the things that happens is that people call us and want us to help them do so many different things. And they want to get involved with rapid response, and they want to get involved with supporting immigrants who are coming out of the Northwest Detention Center. And so we thought that it would be beneficial to explain particularly what Indivisible does and to give you a list of all the immigrant organizations that we know about and what they do so that you know exactly who to contact for the kinds of things that you might want to be involved in. So I'll invite Liz Scott up to share this. And this is the salmon-colored sheet has the list and information about Indivisible. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me? I'm not used to a microphone. Yeah. So like Julie mentioned, when this Trump new season hit, we were all pretty much slammed with the horror and the cruelty. I mean, things have been happening bad to Black and brown people and immigrants forever in this country on both sides of the aisle, but this is a whole new level, and it's in your face, and everybody felt really compelled. I know. I felt really compelled, as many did, to do something, and a lot of us have been doing a lot. But with Indivisible, as Julie mentioned, people were coming to us to activate and do things, and we had to really wrestle with what we're good at, what other groups are doing, and the bandwidth that we have. And as we did that, we really came to focus on what we have been doing, and so that we have focused that our mission is mainly for working for progressive legislation and to get progressive candidates elected. And when we look at candidates, we're looking through the lens of immigration would be one of the lenses we look at. So we want candidates that are going to support immigrants and have bills that protect immigrants and their families. And that's our primary role in supporting immigrants. And we do that through Take Action Network, which many of you may already be using, and someone's going to be talking about later, to get progressive bills passed in our state. We do that through the Legislative Action Team, which contacts our congressional people and our legislators, and through the Elections Team, which gets progressive candidates elected. We also support immigrants through, my hand goes near there, through education of our members on immigration issues, through speakers at our meetings and social media posts. We provide support to immigrants through support of our allies, who are, we're going to talk about in a little bit, but many of our allies have been doing this work for years in direct support and also in advocating. Like, I think we first got involved with La Resistencia back in 2017, 2018. They were already doing work to close down the immigration detention center. So we support those allies. We help tell our members about events that they're doing. We provide our members with information about how to get directly involved. For instance, Julie mentioned the rapid response that a lot of people are wanting to do, especially after seeing Minnesota and what's happening there. I think people here are fired up and want to be able to do that kind of work. And there's an organization that Ellen will tell you about called Wazen that trains. It's immigrant run. They train people to do that rapid response, and they have a network. And so we'd like to get our members to go to those groups. And we also help encourage our members to speak out at city council meetings. Many members have spoken out at Tacoma City Council member meetings, and we're hoping more will be speaking out in your own communities, because not everybody lives in Tacoma. And we've also joined efforts with electeds and allies to fight Sheriff Swank's hateful rhetoric about immigrants and his desire for the Sheriff's Department to work with ICE. So those are the primary ways that Indivisible Tacoma can support immigrants and help our members get connected to other ways. And I think Ellen's going to talk about some of the groups.
Yes, so if you have the gold sheet, we listed some groups, and we know it's not complete. In fact, I just realized when I got here that it didn't have, I don't think it has Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, which is a Seattle group of attorneys who've been working for years to help detainees with legal, issues. But this lists groups who advocate, who put up protests, who help push policy and get awareness, a lot of awareness, and a lot of demonstrations are bringing more awareness. You can see more people are aware of the issues now. So on the gold sheet, you'll see that some of the groups are also doing direct services, and Aid Northwest, for example, helps people as they come out of the detention center, and then some groups help buy phone cards for people in the detention facility. And there are a lot of, and then, for example, Tacoma Community House helps people see if they can learn more English or employment and work on citizenship. So there are a lot of services. And so this sheet is not just a sheet for you to look at and toss. This is an action sheet. We want this sheet to, we'd like everybody here and everybody to, if you spread the word, to look at this sheet and say, I could do this, this, and this. And some people are shy about being out in public. They might want to donate to some of these groups, or they might want to go online and take, as Liz mentioned, the Wyson, there are different trainings with Wyson. So I think if you see this as an action sheet, and then on the back are bills that, as you know, we're in this short legislative session that is scheduled to end March 12th. And so there is lobbying that all of us can do. And these bills, if everyone here took action and made your voice heard on these bills, it could be really effective too. So it's a sheet of actions, and I think that might lead right into the legislative action about, yes. Right now is the time to call and email and contact your reps in Olympia. And it's a special time because some of the bills go, that might have been in the House, they might go to the Senate. So you might take action several times on one bill, but this is the time to be doing it. And we have a wonderful tool called Take Action Network, which helps You can just call your reps and tell them you care about this bill, but the reason we like Take Action Network is because you get when you sign up, you get your own dashboard, and then it tells you this action you should call or email before tomorrow, because the hearing, is tomorrow. So it helps you with your timing, and it's so effective when they get those calls right near the hearing, the time of that hearing on that bill. So TAN is wonderful, and the way to get into TAN, if you aren't already using it, you will see on the blue sheet there is a QR code that has a little tree in the middle. That's our Indivisible Tacoma link tree QR code, and that's how that one branch on that link tree. Guess what? It's Take Action Network. So you scan the QR code with the little tree in it and take the branch that says Take Action Network and go and sign up and get your own dashboard, and you'll be a very effective lobbyist.
So now we want to also talk to you about some actions that are, one of the actions is a national action, and I put this together for you because it's the resist and unsubscribe boycott. It's a national boycott. You may have seen it, and I thought it might be helpful for you to have a list of some of the things that we use every day. Many of us, they have us by the hook, don't they? It's really hard to get rid of these. I did just cancel my Comcast and told them that I did it because they were supporting ICE and Trump. Yeah, we have to find other ways to do some of these things. So I hope this will be helpful to you, this list. And we also have some people here that are going to talk. We have Fenn, who's going to talk about the boycott, which is a local effort.
How are we doing? Excellent. My name is Fenn. Thank you very much, Julie. I am not spearheading, but I'm definitely taking a large role in the boycott. It is an initiative launched by Indivisible Tacoma to help support businesses that participated in the recent January 30th general strike in solidarity with what's going on in Minneapolis. Now, those businesses we track down, and we are contacting them to get consent to put them into a group of businesses that we want people to boost. We want people, if you're going to go out for a drink, we want you to go to those places before you go someplace else. If you want to buy a book, we want you to go to those places before you go someplace else. In doing so, we're building community. Now, we've got some other plans that are coming up that they haven't quite hatched yet, but they're coming, so please keep an eye out. There's going to be a challenge. There's going to be prizes before the No Kings 3, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about keeping this thing going at least until the end of the year. One of the things that I have been working on is trying to get buy-in from people who didn't participate in the January 30th general strike. So one of the things that I would like to ask you guys to do is think about...
Speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? My bad. I was working sound, that's why there's no one there to turn me up. So one of the things I would like everyone here to do and think about when you guys are out, when you're out of one of those local businesses in your neighborhood or maybe somebody else's neighborhood, talk about the general strike. Talk about the idea of a general strike, because one of the reasons why we are doing this is because of the inevitability of it happening again. And we want to make sure that those local businesses who are on this side with us have the means necessary to participate again, possibly for an extended period of time. So think about it, talk to your local businesses, tell them what it's all about and that you would like to have them participate. And if you can find somebody who wants to participate, get in touch with someone at IT and we would love to get them on the list.
And of course, the other thing that we do, as you know, is we participate in protests and rallies and organize them. And so we have one of the heads of our teams here, Terry Spencer, to talk about the March 28th No Kings event.
And this microphone is not for tall people, but I'm always so energized to come to these meetings and be in a room with a bunch of activists who care about what's going on in the world. And I'm just wondering, how many of you, raise your hand if you were at either the first No Kings rally at People's Park or the second in, Wow, this is wonderful. I'm going to clap for you. And I remember being at the first one in the tent where we were making signs together, and people coming up with so much energy. They were just brimming with this desire. They were writing angrily on the signs. They were so ready to speak out. And I don't know about you, but right now, with all the crap that's going on, violations of human rights and civil rights and violating amendments of the Constitution and murders in the streets, et cetera, I'm ready to speak out loudly. And so March 28th, we are going to have another No Kings rally, and we're in the planning stages of that, and we're looking for people who would like to volunteer. Oh, volunteer, thank you. Looking for people who would like to volunteer and perhaps even participate in some of our planning teams, but we'll need a lot of volunteers on the day of. If you would like to get involved, we have an email address, and I'm going to give it to you now, and we'll probably put it out in other ways as well, but it's NAT, which stands for National Action Team.
Put it into your phone right now.
Okay, NAT, Indivisible, it's easy to remember, @gmail.com. And you're all welcome. We love ideas, we love people who are participating, and we're looking forward to speaking out and exercising our First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Just before we introduce our guest speaker, we are going to pass around baskets. We collect donations just if you can donate a little bit, because our expenses are going up with our big growth that's been happening. So that's just if you are able to, it's a great thing to be able to do.
So at this time, it's really my pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight, Kristin Ang. I think you've met her before. Kristin Ang is the Policy Engagement Director for Faith Action Network, FAN. FAN is a multi-faith organization that shares the values of democracy, earth, and justice with Indivisible Tacoma. Just a few examples. She is supporting down at the Capitol with our legislators, the millionaire's tax, housing for all, immigrant protections, all of the things that we've been talking about that are happening now. There's some really, really good bills that are down there that we want to make sure get passed this year. Kristin has a business degree from UPS and law degree from Cornell Law School, both of which have served her and her constituents well. She is down at the state legislature almost every day talking to senators and representatives, and is the first person of color to be elected to the Tacoma Port Commission. Yay! And Indivisible, really, we were so excited to be involved with that effort. She is the perfect person to speak to us tonight about approaching activism with love rather than hate. She treats everyone with respect. She is always trying to reach out to a person's best self. She tries to find positive attributes in others, even those with whom she strongly disagrees. Because she does this, she has been able to influence policy at the port to a great effect, and I'm sure also down at the state legislature. But she was involved in helping close the rendering plant with the Tacoma aroma. And we are so grateful for that. Indivisible Tacoma has supported Kristin in her endeavors because we love her, but also because she's a strong partner with Indivisible. As you know, she served as an outstanding MC for our October No Kings protest. And we greatly appreciate her being here tonight to share her experiences and wisdom about the deep significance of nonviolence and love in the movement to recover our democracy and protect human rights. Kristin Ang.
Well, this mic might be perfect for me, though. So I'm Kristin Ang, and in this, I am your Port of Tacoma Commissioner, but on this hat, I am an advocate, and probably speaking more on the Faith Action Network side, which is the statewide multi-faith organization that advocates for just and compassionate legislation at the state and federal level, and even more so at the federal level now, considering what's going on. First of all, at first when I was asked, it's like, why did they pick me? Did they think nonviolent and they thought of me? But then I thought, that's what I do for a living, actually. That's exactly what I've been doing. And it's great that we opened up with Bad Bunny. You know, that powerful quote that he also had at the Super Bowl. That was such an amazing halftime performance, full of joy, full of culture, inclusivity, saying the only thing more powerful than hate is love, and that we are America, to show how inclusive and interconnected we truly are. And when people think of love, you know, like people quote the Bible, love is patient, love is kind, but I also want to say love is gritty. For those who have had children, you know, it's not always about the niceties. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, also always perseveres. Tonight, I want to talk about love not as an emotion, but as disciplined strategy. Bad Bunny's halftime show was actually quite strategic. He is using his talents and his skills, and we are asking the same of you. Every one of you has talents, skills, and times and treasure to give. And sometimes it feels like, well, it's not a Bad Bunny, but everyone does. They just don't know how big it is, and all steps make a difference, and it actually turns into big steps. And I often say to people, too, that this performance showed that love, when organized, if you saw his halftime show, how much organization went into that in terms of choreography, you know, words, everything. That was power and influence. That was not just, the audience was not just us in America, that was the entire world. There are murals of Bad Bunny in Barcelona right now. I also want to, since I am on the Faith Action Network side, I can now quote a little bit of scripture. So Jesus said to his disciple, so this is about love and about also being wise, I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore be shrewd as snakes and innocent as doves. So what I'm telling you is you don't have to be stupid to be loving, because there are risks, and we do have to be very mindful of that. And so I just want to also acknowledge the anger in the room, the anger that we're seeing, and it is contagious. I think we've seen in the last decade how it has torn families apart. It has torn this country apart. In fact, when I did see that presidential candidate up there, there was a danger, because I could see it was inflaming people. The rhetoric was inflaming people, and it was not just on his side. I could see it on the blue side as well, of what it was bringing out, whether that was fear, but also anger of what was being said. And I was like, this is pretty dangerous, because it's igniting people, but in the wrong way. And I just want to acknowledge that, you know, we are feeling anger, exhaustion, fear, frustration, grief. Politics right now feels very existential, and rights feel fragile, and institutions feel strained, if not taken away. The news cycle never stops. Social media amplifies this by design. It is meant to hit you, and this is where you have to be very clear and very disciplined. Our nervous systems are being saturated, and sometimes I think this is by design, by algorithm, and even by this federal administration and others who wants us to be inundated. So if you feel angry, that does not mean I'm saying that you're spiritually or politically wrong. Righteous anger is often a signal of love. It means that something is wrong, and you know it. We are angry because we care. We are angry because democracy, decency, and our communities are threatened. But we cannot let anger turn into a poison. We cannot let it turn into us to hate and to despair. And so I am going to talk about a couple of the religious teachings and history that goes with nonviolence. And one of the first persons I thought of was Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, taught something very profoundly useful about politics. In Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet, he writes that violence grows from the illusion of separateness. We think harming others does not harm ourselves, but our destinies are intertwined. I often even think about this if I was given an example about what this current administration is doing to immigrants and undocumented people. I think that by harming them, it does not harm us, but it harms every one of us, whether morally, whether those are neighbors. But I just want to say, even if you think economically, undocumented immigrants actually bring in $1 billion of state and local taxes to Washington State, $100 billion to the United States. They never get anything of that back. If we look at the studies, the Cato Institute, one of the most conservative, has shown the benefits that undocumented immigrants have brought. But I also want to point out is that it's also unfair, that there is labor practices that are being done upon them that is wrong, and that has to change. I do want to say anger is not the enemy, hatred is. Anger can become clarity. It's not like I've never used anger. In fact, that's what got me to run for office. But that's not how I won office. It is what ignited me. Clarity can become action. I think that's what you want, is to, when everything seems like chaos, you do want to stand still. You will notice in this time, I think it's a blessed time to know who you are, what you stand for, what your values are, and to know who are your people in this community who stand with you. Because we cannot do this alone. And sometimes this nonviolence, I just want to say, begins in the nervous system. If we allow the outrage to drive every reaction, we are operating on their emotional frame, on their authoritarian politics, which thrive on escalation, humiliation, and fear. But when we transform that anger into clarity, into focused action, we regain agency. So where are we politically? There is sometimes a temptation to ask, what year of Nazi Germany are we in? Not to say that this country has a history of genocide and indigenous peoples or Jim Crow slavery, but people still like to compare to Nazi Germany and Hitler. So to express the urgency. We're not at 1942. I think this is why I say this, because in the 1940s, we were already at war, and there was violence and self-defense, and we're not there. 1942 meant fully consolidated totalitarian regime. No independent courts, no opposition parties, no competitive elections, state-controlled media, industrialized genocide underway, and the concentration camps were operating. We are not there, and that matters. We still have competitive elections, independent courts, federalism, civil society, active opposition parties, protest rights, investigative journalism, ballot initiatives, multiple centers of power, and people still speaking out. And this is why that matters with nonviolence. So we are still in a contested democratic moment. It is not yet a totalitarian regime, and this is where nonviolence practices and methods can work. So authoritarianism often consolidates gradually. We did not get here overnight. We did not get here with just the election of President Trump. In my lifetime, I have seen the policies that have got us here, whether it is income inequality, the routing of the tax system, how we have treated Black and brown people, the environment, et cetera. We got here, and people have planned this for decades with think tanks. So we got here not just by an election, there were people behind this as well as people, as maybe myself. I only got involved with politics not too long ago in my mind. So it is because of norm erosion, institutional stress, polarization, attacks on media, targeting minorities, undermining election trust, and executive overreach. We've had executive overreach for the past decades, but this is on steroids like we have never seen before. Like as someone said, it is really in our face. You have to be very blind not to see it. So when democratic institutions still function, which they still are, early resistance works best. And early resistance requires strategy, not hate, not panic. So nonviolence. Some people ask, is nonviolence like asymmetrical warfare? In one sense, yes. Asymmetrical conflict happens when one side cannot win through conventional means, or force, I should say. Civil rights activists could not defeat the US military. Indian independence with Gandhi leaders knew that they could not defeat the British Empire militarily. And women's suffragists could not overthrow the government by force. So they changed the battlefield. Instead of targeting military strength, they targeted legitimacy, economic systems, public opinion, institutional cohesion, and participation. This is more asymmetrical power, not warfare, power. Nonviolent movements understand that modern governments, even authoritarian-leaning ones, depend on pillars. And this is why these pillars are being under attack or taken. Those are the courts, your bureaucrats. We are supposed to have career bureaucrats that just run the government. But we've seen what they've been doing with DOJ and taking out people who simply follow the law and morals. Police and military, business community. We have seen this. We do need to influence our business community. The media, public compliance. And I'm gonna, without consent, those pillars weaken. It exposes brutality and legitimacy fractures. Expand participation and repression becomes costly. Violence narrows movements, nonviolence widens them. That is not moral romanticism, it's political science. Research has shown that across 100 movements, shows nonviolent campaigns are roughly twice as likely to succeed as violent ones and are more likely to result in stable democracies afterwards. And why? Because the means model the ends. If you want a democratic society grounded in dignity, your methods must reflect dignity. You know, Audre Lorde said, you cannot dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. We cannot have the same cruelty. We cannot out-hate the people who are going to be hateful towards others. We cannot be more cruel. I also want to say with regards to compliance and consent, I think this is where it sounds soft, but it really isn't. When I visited the Museum of Deportation and Resistance in France, the French resistance actually was not in Paris, it was in Lyon. They were actually the first courts, international courts, human rights. And the first thing they said for people was that it was very hard for them. They simply first went on with their lives when the Nazis took over. But they knew that something was wrong. For the most part, people just want to follow laws and live their lives. But their morality, they had to break the laws. It was very little by little because those laws were unjust and unethical. And that is a psychological barrier that people had to break free from. And it was very small at first. Some of the biggest actions never came automatically. It was often small actions first, whether that was talking to your neighbor about it, talking to even accept it yourself. I think to realize yourself that you're gonna have to take some actions, attending a rally, publishing something, talking to someone. And then like a muscle, you know, courage is like a muscle and resistance is a muscle. You built it action after action. You're not gonna be lifting 300 pounds first. You'll start with the first 20, 50 pounds. And that's what it took until people developed the relationships, the trust that required actions that were more risky and more organized. But that took time and relationships. So I just wanted to say that some of nonviolence actually is still risky, as we've seen in Minnesota. And, you know, there was a Bishop, Rob Hirschfield of the Episcopal Diocese of New Hampshire, that urged his clergy to prepare of a new era of martyrdom by getting their affairs in order, by writing their wills. He said, it's time for the clergy to put our bodies between the powers of the world and the most vulnerable. And that shook me. And then we've seen how people have died. And even in the nonviolence movement, there were deaths, there were people beaten, There were things, so people do have to manage their risks about how much risk that they want to do. And every little bit, every small action counts. Nobody has to die. I think that's what I'm getting. And some people didn't plan to either. But there is definitely, nonviolence doesn't mean no danger. I just want to put that out there. So I want to also go through the historical proofs of strategic nonviolence and grounded in history. The first things that people probably think of is Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolence that was rooted in Christian theology, love your enemy, but it was also strategic discipline. He understood that the U.S. had functioning courts. Media exposure mattered. Federal intervention was possible. This may not be with us, but this is why we are fighting also on the federal level for people who still want common sense and democracy. And that violent rebellion would justify repression. In Birmingham, when peaceful protesters were attacked with dogs and fire hoses, television cameras broadcast brutality nationwide. That moral contrast shifted public opinion. Nonviolence fractured the pillars of segregation. King called nonviolence a powerful and just weapon. He was not naive, he was strategic. And I also want to bring out to Malcolm X. I actually very much like Malcolm X. Began with a little bit more militant rhetoric. But even he did not lead violent insurrections. He believed in self-defense. He understood the crushing capacity of the state. And after his pilgrimage to Mecca, his framework expanded toward international human rights and coalition building, not just in his local community or the state, but throughout the world. Because people throughout the world are cheering us on. They are wishing and hoping and want to support us in solidarity with us. Just know that we are not alone, not even in this room. So even leaders, sometimes we can speak in the most militant tones, but we know the reality is that armed revolt gets entrenched. It rarely produces sustainable democracy, and they are the ones with the weapons. But strategic pressure works. India, with Gandhi, he knew that India could not defeat Britain militarily. So Britain relied on India for economic extraction, administrative compliance, and global legitimacy. And that's what he addressed, that's what he challenged. Whether that was with the Salt March or non-cooperation made empire unstable. So people have thought about strikes. And if all of labor strike, then this country would be at a standstill. I think COVID did it. We said we understood what essential workers, but suddenly they're not essential. AI is. That's not the case. The number one thing that authoritarians rely on is the consent, or just simple compliance and not doing anything. And we cannot give them that. Power depends on consent. Withdraw consent, and the system weakens. And now with the women's suffrage movement, suffragists picketed, marched, and endured jail and forced feeding. Violence would have reinforced narratives that women were unfit for political participation, but nonviolence expanded sympathy and legitimacy, and persistence built inevitability. Persistence is also a discipline. Persistence is also faith, because sometimes it feels like what you're doing is not making a difference. Or when are we going to do this? When are we going to do that? What about this big action? But like I said, every little step helps. I'm going to even put myself. When I started, I did not know any of my elected officials. I didn't know who represented me. And now I probably know everybody in the state. Because I work on elections, I also work in lobbying, advocating, and I'm also an elected official myself. So I'm going to say you work on it. So here are some shared strategic principles across movements. Nonviolence is to expand participation, preserve your legitimacy, fracture their pillars of support, because they're going to fracture yours. Use economic leverage. I think this is where the boycotts are creating different business systems. So we do have to have disciplined confrontation. Authoritarianism does rely, has the tendency for dehumanization, fear, disinformation, and institutional erosion. So we cannot fight them with the same fear tactics, dehumanization, rage-driven cruelty. It's just not going to work. That's not the means. Democracy defense must look like democracy. That means participation, transparency, coalition building, accountability, discipline, and human dignity. These are not weak tools, these are stabilizing ones. But they require work, they require time and trust. So how do we move from philosophy to practice? I think it's committing, you're doing it right now. By attending these, by talking to each other, committing to one sustained civic action monthly, even regulating your media intake. You don't have to rage on social media. You have only so much energy and time. Be careful with your time. It is, that is your treasure. And how you use it, where you put your energy. Refuse to amplify the dehumanizing rhetoric. Build your relationships. I think this is where I said organizing is about building relationships. We do that, I do that on the daily, whether it's in my port role or in my Faith Action Network role. None of the bills that we push for are done alone. It's done by very many coalitions, organizations, whether that's the Millionaire's Tax, Senate Bill 6346, that would only tax, the top 1% or 0.5% of Washingtonians, bringing billions of dollars per year. Or even that Senate Bill 5974 that we testified for, which would be law enforcement leader standards. And that is the one that I testified after Sheriff Swank's panel, and I have never seen anyone so unhinged at the Capitol with his crew. He didn't even state his name at first. He basically said that, first he talked about transgender people, and I was like, wow, does TDS actually stands for transgender derangement syndrome? Because he talked about that first. Then he pretty much said that he wouldn't follow their laws, that if they would ban masks, which is, Senate Bill 5885, no masks for law enforcement, then he would encourage his deputies to wear them. And that if they should try to remove them, thousands would surround Pierce County, and what is this legislator going to do about it? And then that same day, he also, on a social media, replied to Senator Murray and said he wanted Minnesota to happen to Tacoma and Seattle tomorrow. And the reason why I think Senate Bill 5974 is very important, because it also has a provision there with regards to the deputizing of volunteers and their use. So if anybody are looking at laws, especially in the 28th LD, talk to your legislators, your House representatives. You can also talk to your 27th. But we did talk to Senator Dingra, who was our featured speaker on our Advocacy Day for FAN, and she was going to pass that bill that day, and we were cheering for her. And the Senate has passed it. Now it's time for the House to pass and for the governor to sign. So that is one bill that will affect Pierce County. So I just wanted to bring that out there for something for you to advocate on. And I want to just say that strategy requires stamina. This is not a marathon. I think somebody, Indivisible, put it out there about a relay race. You're going to burn yourself out if you just day in, day out. You do need some time for joy, celebration, sharing meals, because this is for the long haul. So also we need to protect our democratic infrastructure. We need to support people who do that. We need to if you want to volunteer as a poll worker, observer, support election administrators, attend your city council, your school board meetings, your port meetings, sure. Track state legislation, subscribe to local journalism, defend public schools and libraries. There's always something for everyone, but we must build up our institutions the way we see them to be, and protect targeted communities. Join rapid response networks. I know you guys have probably heard of Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, WISN. Support immigrant accompaniment, advocate for LGBTQ protections, show up visibly at hate crime vigils. It's really just showing up. I learned that with campaigning. People are like, well, I voted for you because you showed up. Hadn't even done anything yet. I simply showed up. I was like, well, wait till I'm in. I'm going to do something. But people first want to know, can you do the first thing? Which is showing up. That's the first thing for anything in life, is you just show up and people appreciate it. That's the first thing. And then supporting the laws, the non-discrimination laws, or things that maybe are about to pass and you say, nope, That's not a law that we want, like the, what is it, Save Voting Act? Yeah, no. So I think in a way authoritarianism flourishes when we're isolated, and it falls away when we're united in solidarity. Yep. And I also want to talk about economic leverage. The NFL did not choose Bad Bunny, Brandy Carlisle, Charlie Puth accidentally. It is about the money. Where do they want to expand their global reach in terms of audiences? Latin America. They want to expand to the world. They don't just want to be American football. They want American football, but they want the currency. I didn't want to say dollars because I'll say the foreign currency. They want the peso, the euro, the yen. They want it all. And considering where the ethos of the people are around the world of what they support, they want to reflect the values of people. If our values, if we just accepted this way, then they wouldn't have shown Bad Bunny. They wouldn't have done Brandy Carlisle, like the most gay singer out there. And and the Black American anthem. That was intentional. Whether by heart or by pocket, that was intentional. And also, I think the thing that we can work on politically is coalition building. Partnering with different people, getting involved with different organizations. You don't have to get involved with every single thing, but get involved with one thing, maybe two. I spread myself a little two things. I didn't tell you all about my other different hats and boards, but just work on one thing. And sometimes I even think it doesn't even have to be what you think politically related, but it somewhat is. Whether it's food banks, whether it's art, that is keeping hope alive and keeping our community sustained. This is why we must have a strong Washington state and a strong budget. The more vulnerable and weaker we are, whether it's despair, whether it's financial, we're going to be attacked. And the best way is that when we're strong and united. So broad coalitions is what we'll need. And of course, organizing, discipline, as well as relationship building, which is, meeting people maybe somewhere at cafes, house meetings, train in de-escalation, because that is discipline. Because like I said, you should probably have a choice of whether you want to be arrested or not. This is why they have trainings for protests, so that you don't get hurt. And this is why sometimes there is coordination between those who host the protests and lead them and police and other authorities, so that they can guide it and make sure that people are safe. So you do want to know who is leading these protests and who is organizing them for your own safety. Develop clear messaging and build turnout infrastructure and plan beyond election cycles. I think, Indivisible was created for the electoral, to win elections and also to influence those that are in the seats. But there's more work to democracy than just that. But we do need to flip some seats. So I'm just going to say that's a lot of work. And even inside, I think it's also a culture. When people see that people are making their voices heard and flipping seats, it shows power. And those on the local level and state level, it's hey, this is what your people want. This is what your constituents want. And there is a pressure and an influence that people feel. Electeds do want to feel supported and loved. I'm just going to say that, like regular people. So if you tell them things, they are listening. But you have to tell them consistently, because lobbyists are in their ears all the time. And there are groups and organizations that are just, created to talk to them or to talk to us. So you have to talk to them too. And I would say, I'm not here to tell you how to manage burnout or despair, but that is up to you. Rest. We need to celebrate some of our wins and counter burnout practices, like I said, not on one person or two people. Just rotate some of this leadership, rotate some of the work. Laugh. A lot of the times, I think this is why sometimes people watch more of Comedy News Central than CBS. But this is also why we are seeing big business take over our media. And then some people now looking for independent news. because nowadays I feel like we are now in conspiracy theory land that's turning out to be true with regards to certain files. I'm just gonna say. Like, nobody is shocked anymore that people are like, oh yeah, there's probably aliens. Nobody's even care, like, yeah, we're fine with that, but what the heck is happening here? So I just wanna say authoritarian movements feed on exhaustion, sustainable movements build on joy. So remember that. It's not all about the anger and the seriousness. There is a time for that as well. So I just want to say that we are not in 1942. We are powerful. We are in a moment where our institutions are still somewhat functioning. I'm going to say somewhat, because we know that they're being attacked and corroded from within, and they were not perfect to begin with. I think that's the thing. And that's why we've seen these cracks, and that your participations matter, and coalitions can still expand, and that we do have to be very strategic. So I guess the question is not what year are we in, but what conditions prevent democratic collapse, and how do we strengthen those conditions? And I think we have gone through some of those things, whether it's participation and economic leverage. Now, I just want to close, again, about love. Love, I think that we've shown that love has worked with these movements in the past. And strategic, disciplined, organized love remains one of the most powerful forces available to us. And I think it's the one that most resonates with us, that is true to us. The reason why we cannot use their tools is because those are not the weapons that we are talented and skilled in response to our souls. Use what you've got. Use what responds to you, because that is what is going to respond with other people. I often, when people tell me about running, what's the most important? And I tell them, know your why, because your why is what's going to sustain you, but your why is also what's going to attract people to your movement, to each other. More than reputation, more than endorsements, it's the why. So I think we always have to remember our why, and that is about loving our neighbors, loving our democracy, loving our community. And that is strength, not weakness. So, thank you. She asked if anybody has been in the ICE detention center. Usually attorneys get to go there, and I think your Congress people were able to enter as well at one point. But I'm going to tell you the history a little bit about that detention center. That detention center was actually welcomed in Tacoma at a time. It was actually rejected by other places and was thought to be something for jobs. And I think we do have to be careful about where we invest our money. I think we now know. Yes, we do. Right? And there was a bill, Senate Bill 6109, that would have divested state pension money and other monies from any investments that went into private detentions. I testified on that, but that did not move forward. There was also a movement to divest from any fossil fuels as well. Coal, in particular, I would say coal. I should say just coal, and things that were morally wrong this year. So Senate Ways and Means listened to that. But that is the first time, I'm gonna say it's failed this year, but that was the first time I've ever heard people have that idea. I've heard it before, but I've never seen it in hearings, and maybe its time has come. I think people knew that where we invest our money, where we put our time, what do we prioritize? A lot of the times we were told that we could not have healthcare because we couldn't afford it, or SNAP. But guess what? The SNAP benefits, the food benefits, that amount of money is actually going into the ICE budget. Just know that. That's where we prioritize. In terms of the detention center, your legislature did pass a bill to close down private detention centers. However, California also passed a similar bill, and the Ninth Circuit ruled in favor of GEO Group 2 of the 3 were Trump appointees, and they did rule in favor of GEO. So instead, your legislature has passed laws with regards to the conditions at the detention centers. So whether that bill that passed last year with regards to that the Department of Health had to set some standards with regards to nutrition, sanitary, water quality, that they were allowed to enter, and that the Attorney General had powers to sue. In fact, that particular detention center was sued by Attorney General Ferguson at the time when it violated minimum wage laws, because we say people can't work outside, but they were actually forcing people to work for $1 a day, and some have even said a bag of chips. And that commissary, it costs more than anything. It costs twice as much as an airport for food and drink. So it is definitely more immoral what we're doing to people there and the conditions there. So they passed that law. There's also a law that's going, well, actually, I could go through some of my bills if you like for this year. A bill with regards to reporting requirements for private detention centers, that they had to report for the Department of Health and even local law enforcement if there should be cases of like hunger strikes, any types of incidents. There is also a bill, let me just go through my bill list here, with regards to banning masks on law enforcement. California had a similar and was ruled the courts ruled against it because there was discrimination versus local law enforcement and federal law enforcement. However, Washington State says all law enforcement, so it should overcome that particular hurdle. There's also a bill called the SAFE Act with regards to securing childcare facilities, healthcare facilities, educational facilities, that they could not simply enter private spaces of those areas without a warrant. There's also the Immigrant Protection Act, House Bill 2105, in which if ICE is telling an employee that we're going to audit you and come in, they do have to give alert to their employees and some, notice. So there are some bills that are going through your state legislature. If you wanted to know more, I can tell you that, but I'm just going to answer the question that you gave me. I do a weekly update for Faith Action Network. You can sign up for an e-news about what's going on with the legislature. I know that Onita attended our advocacy day, and some people are signed up, and I give them a weekly what's going on at the state legislature. And some of the bills, we do have everything from immigration to some environment, the economic justice fronts, criminal justice reform. Probably the last bill that passed the Senate, because now is cutoff day. You have to pass one chamber, whether the House or the Senate. By your local senator, Senator Trudeau, was the environmental crimes bill. So that passed the Senate. Now it goes to the House. And there's bills there to also address data centers and AI and its energy use, about the affordability to the public, and that they also have to transition to clean energy and conform to CETA, which is the Clean Energy Transformation Act that Washington has passed. So despite the fact that this administration took out the endangerment rule with regards to the fact that we are a nation that pretty much says that, well, CO2 is fine, emissions is fine, there's no endangerment, government need not do anything about it. Your state is still doing something about it.
If you have a question or comment, would you please go to the mic?
Hi, my name is Aisha. So as a leader connected to faith communities, some of which hold traditional views about sexuality, how do you personally navigate theological differences while publicly advocating for the LGBTQ plus inclusion and equity?
Sure. Well, I would just say for my particular organization, Faith Action Network did advocate for marriage equality. Also, I'm gay. So that's very much easy. And they know that. A lot of people know that everywhere. It's not like I wear rainbow suits and it's not always announced, but that's pretty much known amongst a lot of people. We have also advocated for the protection of transgendered care. In fact, the SHIELD Act, I didn't know how fast that would actually be necessary, which was to protect providers and patients of reproductive care, trans care, and end-of-life care. And when we advocated and that passed, I didn't know that Texas was about to just chase someone all the way to Washington State and try to go after a doctor and a patient. So it was automatic, and so fortunately that SHIELD law was passed. I do know that, the history of, Christian churches, and I also know that my own Catholic Church was not with Faith Action Network with regards to marriage equality. They differed on that. We sometimes are with the Catholics when we do our advocacy for food security, housing, etc., but there are certain things that we part, but we still work together on a lot of the bills. And for the most part, with some of the communities that we're at, we have some shared values, but shared humanity. So a lot of the times, whether Buddhist, Sikh, Jewish, Christian, they are advocating for the protection of all, knowing that we are all connected. But I also say, if you're, in a way, I also say, like, if your community and your faith has caused harm, you have to be more active in pursuing the healing. I also know that because when I'm in the port, I know I didn't do all the environmental damage and the harm and the relationship fractures, but I also know what I now represent as my role and as elected, with the history. Thank you.
I might just not be up to speed news-wise, but is there anything we can do about getting ICE out of the hospitals, especially St. Joseph's? One of the ICE people left a weapon in the family restroom, didn't even know he left his gun in there. And we did a vigil at St. Joseph's, and people came out, and there's people handcuffed to their beds, and there's guards with machine guns and things walking around the hall. The nursing staff themselves came out and begged us to do something.
I've heard that. One of the bills, I'm not sure if it will affect that. The bill currently that is running, that it did pass the Senate, was Senate Bill 5906. And that is...
There's just so much to keep up on. I was pretty sure everybody knew about it, and I didn't yet. It's just a lot.
And it's called the SAFE Act. SAFE Act, you could probably Google that one. Yep, it's the Secure and Accountable Federal Enforcement Act. Expand and codify model policies developed by the state AG to increase immigrant protections at or near K through 12 schools, higher education institutions, and publicly operated healthcare facilities. Senate Bill 5906, but I would say the devil is in the details, and how it's the different amendments that have happened to that. It's something to take a look at if that would actually address that, but I can check. So that's Senate Bill 5906. It has not passed fully yet because the session is not over. We have 3 weeks to go. It has passed the Senate, but now it has to pass the House. And so I'll likely testify on here. It's scheduled for a public hearing in the House Committee on Civil Rights and Judiciary at 10:30 a.m. on the Friday. You'll see me on there if I get to testify. But it's already scheduled for an executive session, so I think it does have the support. Usually when they do want to pass something really fast, they've already have an executive session in mind for that particular bill.
Hi, my name's Julia, and I'm a member of the Climate Alliance of South Sound. And my question is that I'd like to know about what can be done to prevent the LNG from expanding, and also any other renewable energies that could be used more on the port. And also, how can the Port Commission have more influence over the City Council? Because my understanding is that there have been some recommendations that the port has given to City Council and they have not taken. Or really taken and implemented them. So I just would like your feedback on both those topics. Thank you.
Sure. Maybe invite me another time for my port head, because there's a lot of things I could talk about and clear up. With regards to the LNG plant, it is not expanding. There was at a point when they were applying for permits for expansion, and they also asked the port, and it did not go, let's just say. But I don't want to mislead people. Our local LNG plant in Tacoma may not expand. It's actually one of the smallest plants if we really take a look at what's happening on the national level, whether that's in Louisiana, Texas, et cetera, or even Canada. This is why Canada is so important to this administration, and that's why we also visit, is because that's our #1 trading partner, if it's not by ship, right? But also, it's the energy that we derive from Canada in terms of oil, LNG, electricity. And though we may not expand LNG in Tacoma, LNG is planned to expand by those people. And whatever that we do not provide or supply, they will. I think that means that if we are taking a look at it globally and how you address environmental, every community has to be in it. So, and this administration is definitely very gung-ho on LNG. And the thing is, they're very allergic to renewables and electricity. It is very strange, and even hydrogen. Because a lot of the people who have invested in fossil fuels are also investing in renewables because they see the trend around the world. There are other countries that, yes, they use fossil fuels, but they're also investing in renewables. But for some reason, this particular administration is allergic to it and is actually hampering innovation and investments in it. And that will harm us for decades if we do not change. There was a point in the Biden administration, and he was investing in these one-shots, $1 billion, the infrastructure, et cetera, into renewable energies, clean energy, and people were getting into it. But now those things are at a pause, and we are being surpassed around the world.